Welcome to Bellevue, a wonderful place to live, work, and play. The city of Bellevue has weathered the recession and kept within a comfortable operating position. But Bellevue has made major cuts in infrastructure spending to keep a balanced budget. The city slashed spending on its Capital Improvement Plan, or CIP, in 2009. This coping strategy of stopping maintenance and building infrastructure cannot continue if Bellevue expects to maintain a high quality of life for its residents. On an alarming note, the city assumed to its detriment that the effects of the recession on the city would wear off in 2009, and is budgeting on the same assumption for 2010. Bellevue still is in a solid position from a lender's perspective. On the other hand, Bellevue has major commitments to build new infrastructure that will need to be paid for in the future. The Association of Washington Cities surveyed cities around the state on how they are coping with the recession. Among the largest cities in Washington, the AWC found that a large majority decreased city employment, while Bellevue actually increased its staff. Most cities also deferred infrastructure investments, as we see in Bellevue.
To further understand Bellevue's financials, it's useful to compare it to a similar city. We chose Vancouver, Washington because they're both in Washington state and therefore subject to the same regulations. Their populations are similar and they're both suburbs of major cities. When comparing the financials of the two cities, you see that Bellevue's net assets are almost twice that of Vancouver. However, their revenue for their general funds are almost the same. The result, because Bellevue is smaller in population, the total revenue per population for Bellevue is greater. However, their debt burdens are pretty similar. When looking at the revenues in their general fund, it's clear that the majority is made up of taxes. 75% of the revenues in Bellevue and 77% in Vancouver come from different tax streams. A major difference between the two cities is the fact that Vancouver cannot rely on sales and use tax because of the state of Oregon being right next door, a state without sales tax. Bellevue's estimates for sales tax in 2009 were much greater than their actual revenue, and therefore that affected their budget in a much greater way than Vancouver's was impacted. After studying the financials from both cities, it's very clear they have different approaches to providing information. On Bellevue's website, their budget page is very technical and does not invite citizens to get involved in the budgeting process. On the other hand, Vancouver's budget page invites citizens to get involved and provides opportunities for them to learn more about the budgeting process.
So looking beyond the financial statements, there were a number of questions that came out of the capital investment program. As the management's discussion and analysis says, the City of Bellevue's capital investment program was significantly scaled back. One bit of information that would be helpful is a breakdown of the depreciation in 2009. Is the total of $178 million higher than normal? Does a large percentage of this total represent deferred maintenance? We know the city's rating of the overall condition of arterial streets fell from 80 out of 100 to 75, which is still acceptable. But what about other aspects of infrastructure, such as sidewalks, bike paths, utilities, and building? Even if these expenses do not need to be addressed, Bellevue is poised to see capital expenditures skyrocket, with several large projects. The city has lobbied for a downtown tunnel rather than allowing light rail to come through on surface streets, which could cost the city up to $150 million if approved by Sound Transit. They have also started work on an ambitious Bell-Red Corridor improvement plan, which could be very costly and has already begun. Even though the plans don't show up as liabilities in the modified accrual system, these capital projects will be very difficult to stop and very expensive to complete. Raising money to pay for new projects will be extremely difficult for several reasons. First, the state of Washington is having a fiscal crisis of its own, and the federal government will probably not be able to keep the stimulus dollars flowing for much longer. Second, cities in Washington have limited options for raising revenue on their own. This is compounded by the new law requiring a 2/3 majority in order to raise any taxes. There are some possibilities for new revenue streams, however. Possible avenues for consideration include a property tax lid lift, the imposition of a local improvement district, a transportation benefit district, and there have been some signs that the state will consider helping ailing cities by giving them new legal options for raising their own revenue. If they can raise their own revenue, it would be great if the city of Bellevue can move further away from the sales tax. Sales tax has come in far below projections in this volatile economy. It has shown that the property tax is actually much more stable. As you can see, sales tax was the most far off of its production for 2009 of the 4 major tax revenue sources. Sales tax rose sharply in the first half of this decade, but then plummeted back down in the financial turmoil of the last couple years. Whereas property taxes were slow and steady and did go down slightly between 2007 and 2008, but in general have been much more stable as a source of revenue for the city. If we look at the change in fund balance over the last 9 years, it is apparent that Bellevue has not exercised sufficient fiscal discipline. Although they were able to put away money in 2006, it was modest compared to the decrease in fund balance in 2005. This is part of the reason Bellevue was forced to spend all of its rainy day fund last year. So should you move to Bellevue or consider taking a job there? While we can't answer those questions directly from these financial statements, the financial statements do tell us that there are troubling uncertainties around Bellevue. While there are big plans for interesting projects down the road, there is great uncertainty as to how to pay for them. And while they have been hiring while other cities around the state have been laying workers off, it is unclear how they will continue to keep those workers on board.